I was standing at SeaTac Airport with my bag on my shoulder. Boarding was in 11 minutes. I reached into my travel pouch for my passport. It was gone. I checked again. I checked the zip pocket. I checked my coat. Nothing. My mother looked at me from across the gate area. She did not move. She did not offer to help. She just watched. And that look on her face told me everything. It was not worry. It was boredom. Some people will never tell you directly that you do not matter to them. They just keep showing you. Over and over. In small ways. Then in enormous ones. If you have ever given everything to people who treated it like nothing, you already know how this feels. Subscribe. This story has one of the most satisfying endings I have ever told. I do not want you to miss it. My name is Jade. I am a tattoo artist and illustrator based in Seattle. I have been doing this work for 6 years. I trained under a master artist for 3 of those years. I took out $40,000 in debt to fund my apprenticeship and my supplies. I built something real. Something mine. My family never said they were proud of me, not once, not in those words. My father is a retired accountant named Gerald. My mother is Linda. My sister is Sienna. Sienna is 4 years older than me. She is the one they chose. Always. I do not say that with self-pity. I say it because it is the clearest fact of my life. At SeaTac that morning, I had planned to join my family on a short trip to London, then Paris. The trip cost $20,000. My father said it was a retirement celebration for himself. I had saved $1,200 to cover my share of meals and museums. My passport was gone before I ever reached the gate. What nobody in that room knew was that my grandmother Rose was in a nursing facility 40 minutes from that airport. She had suffered a major stroke 3 months earlier. My family knew. They had not told me. I found out on my own 2 days before the airport. I visited her on a Wednesday afternoon between clients. She was thinner. Her left hand did not move the way it used to. A nurse named Patricia pulled me aside in the hallway. She said the pharmacy had been calling the family for weeks about Rose's blood thinners. The calls went to my father. He never responded. Rose had gone without her medication for a period of time. I stood in that hallway and felt something cold settle into my chest. Not anger, not yet. Just a very clear and very quiet understanding. What nobody in that airport gate area knew was that the passport was not lost. When I was 12 years old, my parents took Sienna on a Caribbean cruise. I was dropped off at Grandma Rose's cottage with one suitcase. No explanation, no apology. Just a kiss on the top of my head and a car pulling away. Rose held my hand that night on her porch. She said the most beautiful glass has to go through the fire first. I did not fully understand that then. I was 12. I just knew I had been left. When Sienna graduated high school, my parents threw her a destination party in Napa Valley. $15,000. Catered dinner. A photographer. A dress that cost more than my first month's rent. When I finished my apprenticeship, my father took me to a pub near his office. He ordered a burger. He checked his phone twice during the meal. He said good for you when I showed him my first commission piece. That was it. When I needed help with my debt 2 years ago, I called my father directly. He told me they were tight. He said the retirement account had taken a hit. He said he wished he could do more. At that airport gate, minutes after my passport disappeared, Sienna walked over to me. She held out a key. She said I could stay at her condo and watch her French bulldog Gatsby. She said it like she was doing me a favor. My father looked at me over her shoulder. He said I was not quite refined enough for Europe anyway. He said it quietly, like it was a fact he had simply remembered. My jaw stayed tight the entire walk back through that terminal. I stopped near the window. I watched them walk toward the boarding tunnel. Sienna did not look back. My father did not look back. My mother turned once. Just once, that same look, bored. Done. I took out my phone. I photographed them walking through that tunnel. Then I sat down. I was not sad. I was thinking. Comment trigger. People always say just cut them off and move on. But what do you do when cutting them off means watching them destroy what you built? What would you have done? I am genuinely asking. I went back to Rose's nursing home that same afternoon. I brought her a vanilla pudding from the cafeteria because I knew she liked it cold. We talked for a long time. She asked me something I did not expect. She asked if the family had taken my passport. I did not answer right away. Then she told me something she had never told anyone outside of her accountant. Rose had an emergency fund. $60,000. She had kept it in a joint account with my father for the past decade. She said she had trusted him to manage it for her care. I opened the bank app on my phone right there in her room. She gave me the account number from memory. The balance was $382. I read the transaction history slowly. $20,000 had moved to a property holding account 6 weeks earlier. The rest had moved in smaller amounts over 4 months. The timing matched Sienna's new apartment deposit. It matched the London and Paris bookings. I put my phone face down on my knee. Rose watched my face. She already knew. I asked her what she wanted to do. She thought for a moment. Then she asked me to help her call someone. They had no idea what was coming. I did not call my father. I did not send a message to my mother or Sienna. I spent the next morning at the public library. Not because I needed the internet, but because I needed to be somewhere quiet and ordinary while I gathered everything. I printed the transaction records. All of them. I had already requested Rose's medical records from the nursing facility. Patricia, the nurse, had signed a written statement about the pharmacy calls and the missed medication window. I found the state aid application my father had filed on Rose's behalf. He had listed her assets as near zero. The $60,000 account was not disclosed. That is not a paperwork mistake. That is fraud against the state. I put every document into a plain folder. Rose and I made our call together from her room, her hand on the phone beside mine. Her voice was steadier than I expected. She told the investigator her son's name. She spelled it out. She said she wanted him held accountable. The investigator asked her if she was certain. She said yes without pausing. I did not say anything dramatic. There was nothing left to say. I drove home to Sienna's condo. I fed Gatsby his dinner. I sat on the floor with him for a while. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. I felt something I could not name exactly. Not relief. Something quieter than that. They were somewhere over the Atlantic when the first call started. I know the timeline because I checked the flight tracker that evening. The investigators had begun pulling bank records within hours of our call. The State Fraud Division moves faster than people expect when elderly. Care funds are involved. By the time my family landed in London, there were open inquiries on 2 accounts registered to my father's name. I found out later, through a process that took several weeks, that my father had used Rose's address on the state aid filing. That connected the fraud to her current facility. That made the nursing home a secondary reporting party. They were in London, touring, posting photographs of double-decker buses and afternoon tea. I was at home, working, tattooing a floral sleeve on a woman who drove 2 hours for her appointment. I did not check their social media. I found out about the photographs later. The first sign I had that things were moving was a call from an unknown number. It was not for me. It was a misdirected call meant for my father. The caller realized the mistake and hung up quickly. But I recognized the area code. It was a government office. My father called me from London 4 days into the trip. He did not ask how I was. He said there was some confusion about a bank account and asked if I had spoken to anyone. His voice had a texture I had never heard in it before. He was not angry. He was not cold. He sounded small. I told him I had visited Rose. I told him she was doing better. I told him she sent her love. Then I said goodbye and ended the call. I set the phone down on the counter. Gatsby put his chin on my foot. I stood there in the kitchen for a moment, just stood there. Then I went back to work. I spent a long time thinking I was the one who did not fit. Too much, too loud, too different. Not refined enough. I believed it more than I should have. Here's what I know now. The people who tell you that you do not belong are usually the ones who need you most. They just cannot afford to let you figure that out. You were never the problem. You were the thing they could not control. Second comment trigger, tell me something. If this had been you, would you have done the same thing, or would you have given them one more chance? Drop it in the comments. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story right now, send it to them. They will know why. If this story gave you that feeling, that specific satisfaction of watching the truth finally land, subscribe. Because I have more. Stories about people who were written off and counted out, who then made sure that was the last mistake anyone made. See you in the next one.